What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Marvel Dark Ages. Yes, we are. I almost said Dark Days. That was a Batman story. So, in the last video that we did, we basically talked about how the biggest concern that all the, heroes, for lack of a better word, have to contend with while they're in Wakanda is this idea that Apocalypse is basically doing Apocalypse things and trying to find a way to seemingly conquer the world. They don't really know the exact specifications of his plan, but what they do know is they have to get to Europe to find some way to stop whatever it is that Apocalypse is doing. Now, remember, a lot of what Tom Taylor relies on when it comes to this story, which is one of the reasons why he can get away with a 6-issue story as opposed to like a maxi series, so it's like 12 issues, is really just existing knowledge on comic book characters. By and large, with the exception of Jonathan Hickman's run on the X-Men, Apocalypse hasn't necessarily been a bad guy or a good guy. Apocalypse just is kind of on his own and does his own thing. He believes in like social Darwinism, so only the strongest deserve to survive. He doesn't differentiate between heroes and villains. It's just the weak and the strong. So in Apocalypse's world, there wouldn't really be a difference between somebody like, let's say, Dr. Octopus and somebody like Spider-Man. That the reality is, if Dr. Octopus is too weak to make it in the new world, Dr. Octopus would die. If Spider-Man was too weak to make it in this new world, Spider-Man would die. And that would basically be it. So in some ways, and really in more of like a moral philosophical way, he's pretty far beyond the traditional heroes as we normally see them. He is as far beyond mutants as they are beyond you. He is eternal. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, that was one of the phrases that Apocalypse had in X-Men the Animated Series, and I always loved it. He had like the best lines in that show. But the thing about this is that in order to figure out what it is that they're going to do and how it is that they're going to get there, they end up relying on what is in effect the transport system that gets what are basically refugees from Europe to Africa. Now, this is one of the things to keep in mind, and in fact, this is largely Tom Taylor borrowing heavily from the events of Age of Apocalypse. And the reason why is because despite all of Apocalypse's vaunted power and his intelligence, at the end of the day, he is not just all-encompassing. Those individuals who know the correct routes, who know where to go, who know, how to sneak away, essentially, they can escape the reign of Apocalypse. And it's one of those things that Marvel always kind of brought in to establish this idea that yes, Apocalypse is powerful, Apocalypse is capable, he's certainly not somebody you want to mess with on any given day, but he's not all-seeing, right? There are some things even he simply just doesn't know. And so that's what's really going on here, that there was a helicarrier that belonged to S.H.I.E.L.D., but when the power went out, of course, the helicarrier's traditional method of transportation stopped working as well. And so what it did is it actually led to Moon Girl coming up with this genius idea that what they needed was, one, someone strong enough to be able to drop anchor for the helicarrier, because this anchor is just colossal in scale, leading to them using Colossus, right? The only real super strong guy they have at their disposal, which really begs the question, where's the Incredible Hulk in all of this? And the other thing they use is a mode of transportation that's actually organized by Storm herself. That what they've done is they've set up sails on this ship, and then Storm basically provides the wind to blow it in any particular direction. Otherwise, they would have to rely on the way sailors used to travel. So if it was something like where they wanted to go north, where I guess in this instance they're traveling to Wakanda, so they want to go east, southeast. My geography is horrid. I've always been terrible at geography. Like, they're coming from Portugal. For the longest time, I thought Portugal was in South America, right? Like, I'm sorry, we as Americans are terrible with geography. I don't know about you guys in other countries, but the thing about this is that in way back in the olden days, if sailors wanted to go east and the winds were blowing west, then they would literally have to let up their sails, right? Like, put their sails away and just sit and wait for the wind to start blowing east. And then when the wind started blowing east, they would let their sails back down, and then they would just ride the wind. With Storm at their side, literally the winds blow whatever direction she wants them to, which is cool, right? And so ultimately, with all these refugees, about 100,000 people, they end up on the shores of Africa, specifically Wakanda. And the funny thing about this is, of course, Storm and T'Challa are still together. Thank God, I'm so glad this is something that they maintained. I don't know how many of you guys read, what was it? It wasn't Civil War, that was when they got married. Was it Secret Invasion? It was one of those stories where Black Panther runs up on Storm and he's like, the high priest of Wakanda has nullified our marriage. And she's like, aren't you the high priest? And he's like, I gotta go. And like that's how he divorces her. He's just like, we're done. And then just leaves. And that's basically it. It's cool to see they're still together, because I gotta be honest with you guys, man. Storm and T'Challa are like the 1-2 punch of married couples in Marvel Comics, right? It's they're at the top. I always loved the idea of Storm and T'Challa being together. But the cool thing about this is that one, while they are married, two, they've got a baby. They got a little kid, which is awesome, right? It's really, really cool to see. And there's a little bit of banter back and forth between the two, which is one of the things that I always loved about the marriage between Storm and T'Challa, is neither one of them puts up with the other's nonsense. And so, like, when T'Challa starts acting a little big for his britches, or when Storm starts doing the same thing, they're right there to be like, haha, you need to bring it down a notch. I just love the way their relationship is written. I just love the way it's handled in Marvel Comics. Of course, news is also dropped kind of indirectly to Storm that Okoye is basically out of the picture. The details aren't necessarily given to us on, in the comic, but we already know, right? Okoye was killed by Quicksilver when he was being controlled by the Purple Man. So that information is, of course, passed to Storm as well. But at that point, that's when the revelation kind of comes in, when it's like, we need to head back to Europe. At that point, there's a couple things that go on here. One, and this is one of the things that was kind of given to us early on, if you're on a helicarrier and you're moving 100,000 people, that's a lot of people. And when you're talking about having like the full crew necessary in order to run a helicarrier, that's even more people, probably more than can fit on a single helicarrier, right? Or a single aircraft carrier. And so what they did is they actually invoked multiple man Jamie Madrox, so that when the ship or when the boat needs to be ready to make sail, he can just duplicate himself several times over in order to ensure that everything's working the way that it's supposed to. And then when that's done, everything's just kind of on the move, he just brings them all back to his normal self. It's a pretty elegant solution. But the other thing about this is you basically have Nick Fury, who's essentially, piloting the ship, or at least the one running the show, and then it seems like you have Nightcrawler as a second in command, which is cool. I gotta say, Pirate Nightcrawler looks pretty dope. But when the whole situation is given to Nick Fury, like, Apocalypse is doing something in Europe, we gotta get to Europe, we gotta find out what he's doing, and we have to basically find a way to stop him, because if it's Apocalypse, he's not up to any good. He's not doing anything to make the world better. If anything, he's gonna make life hell on all of us. So, like, we gotta find out what it is that he's doing after he kidnapped Tony Stark. He's got Reed and all these guys. We gotta find out what's happening. Initially, Nick Fury is very hesitant because he's like, we literally just sailed all the way from Portugal to Africa, and you want us to go back? Not only that, Storm was basically pushing the sails the entire time. So, like, you want Storm to push us back. Like, I don't know if I'm down for this, but at the end of the day, the case that's made by Susan Storm is, look, either we can go with you or we can go without you. But, like, one way or another, we're going. And the response to Nick Fury is no. Like, here's the thing. If you go by yourself, there's no way, there's no guarantee you would even survive against any of the major heavy hitters that exist out there in the water, right? Like the Raiders, Namor the Submariner, any of the monsters that exist, because one of the things we also have to contend with is that with the world collapsing the way that it has, most likely Monster Island has broken free. For those of you guys who don't know, Monster Island is basically the place where, like, all these different monsters from Marvel Comics just sort of hang out. They just chill. I don't know what they do, play ping pong, watch reruns of Global Guts, no idea. But regardless of the situation, like, that's, without any kind of technological advancement, the world is essentially free reign. And so that's the concern that Fury has, is like, it would be a pointless rescue mission to get there and try to get Tony Stark if you're drowned, or if you're captured, or any number of things. And so he's like, okay, look, if this is what we're gonna do, Storm, I need to know if you're in for it. And Storm's like, yeah. She's like, I'm literally the Queen of Wakanda, and if we're talking about Apocalypse doing something that threatens the world, then it means it also threatens my people and my country, therefore we are going. And so Storm, of course, fills the sails, and the ship ends up on its way. And it's a really, really cool moment here, because you get a couple things going on, right? Some discussions and so on. But one of the bigger talking points here really comes from Dr. Doom, when he's with Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and X-23 or Wolverine, and with Spider-Man and so on. And the big question that he talks about here is just like, okay, so the nature of this mission is, yes, it's a rescue mission for Tony Stark, but let's be honest, we will probably never get a better shot than to kill Apocalypse in this moment right now. Right? If we go to Europe, we rescue Tony Stark, and we leave, Apocalypse will know that we're capable of that. He'll strike back in some form or fashion, right? He may be expecting us to a degree, but he doesn't know under what circumstance to expect us, and he doesn't know how we're going to appear. And so having that element of surprise is the best chance we have of taking him out. Now, again, this is the cool thing, because I love this idea of Dr. Doom discussing how they're going to kill Apocalypse. Again, more so than that, it's like we mentioned in the last video, I love that Dr. Doom is very, very very careful in how he deals with Apocalypse, because under any normal circumstance, Dr. Doom would just be like, I will take care of him. I will save all of you because I am Doom and I'm better than you all, and you can't save yourselves. It's the most Dr. Doom thing for him to say. But the fact that he's just like, we have to strike Apocalypse. I can't kill him on my own. Like that kind of a thing. It's just so cool because it really just shows the gravity of the threat that Apocalypse poses. Because in the face of a being that harnesses celestial technology, right? Those guys who are unfamiliar with this guy, Apocalypse can basically do everything. Like the long and short of this is, with the exception of being able to alter reality on really any level, he can give himself essentially any superhuman power, and he has it. He has size alteration, he can emit energy blasts, he can make himself intangible, he can teleport, he can increase his mass, make himself insanely durable, right to the point where it's almost on the same level as Vision, if not more so. He's got telepathy, he's got telekinesis. The guy can do it all, right? He's just a one-man killing machine if he wants to be. He quite literally lives up to his namesake. But the biggest concern that like Spider-Man and Wolverine and all these people have is knowing Dr. Doom as they know him. It's, so if we do this, Victor Von Doom, if we invade Europe, and we kill Apocalypse, who do you suppose should be the leader of Europe? And Dr. Doom picks up on this immediately, and he's like, look, if I wanted to rule a nation, I would have taken Wakanda. I've done it before. And he has. It was a story called Doom War. But he's like, if I wanted to do that, I could do that. But that's not really my goal here. The problem is we don't really find out exactly what it is that Dr. Doom is shooting for, because there's this kind of just blood-curdling scream that comes from Spider-Man's daughter, May, who's not supposed to be there. But as any good child does, one, her curiosity got the better of her, and two, she snuck aboard the ship. Which of course we kind of knew was gonna happen when he was like, you have to stay here. At the same time, it's also like Luke Cage and Jessica Jones' daughter, and it's just like, what are you even doing? I mean, that's the thing, right? They're kids. They're supposed to be stupid, right? They're supposed to make bad decisions. They're learning. They're pushing barriers and so on and so forth. As they get older, they will realize how dumb of a mistake this was, assuming they live long enough to get older. But the thing about this is that the reason why she was screaming is her spider sense was kicking off, and so is Peter Parker's. Peter Parker's spider sense kicks off at the same time, and at that moment, Nick Fury is impaled by what's basically a hook and then yanked over the side of the ship, and that's when the Ghost Raiders appear. Now, these guys are cool, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I would read a one-shot story about these dudes. I would read a one-shot tie-in to the Ghost Raiders. All we're really told here is that when the world went dark, right, when that EMP started blanketing everything and power was lost, there were just pirates who were out there in the ocean with no real means of going anywhere and were by all standards of measurement stranded. So they were quite literally just counting the days until they die, unless they turned to seawater, and then they probably would have just counted less days because they would have died faster. But in an act of desperation, as usually happens in this situation, they turned to Mephisto, who actually most likely appeared to them. But they ended up basically making bargains with Mephisto, selling their souls, and they ended up becoming what are in effect Ghost Riders instead. And what they do here is they literally just sail around the ocean, and any poor soul who ends up straying across their path is basically drugged down to the depths and drowned. Right? They're set on fire at the same time, but they're drowned. And as a result of that, they end up basically passing on to Mephisto, right? You know, and Mephisto builds his numbers down in hell or whatever it is. And so the crazy thing here is, of course, you end up getting Fastball specials, which is cool. Like, for those of you guys who don't know what that is, those of you guys who aren't old school enough to know what that is, the Fastball special originated in really following giant-size X-Men, where Colossus would throw Wolverine. Whenever it was a target that Wolverine was trying to hit that was exceedingly far away, he wouldn't be able to get there in time, or it was really high up, literally Colossus would just grab Wolverine and throw him at it. It was really cool to see. It was just one of those little hallmark moments, right, from the old X-Men stories. Well, now that's going on with both X-23 and Gabby, which is awesome to see, right? It's really, really cool to see. And so, of course, the other thing that we get here, and this is a ridiculously cool moment. One, the Ghost Raiders have their own ship, which looks amazing. And two, they've got miniguns, man, shooting fire bullets. I want to see a one-shot. Like, I want to see a comic that focuses on these guys because it's just amazing. But for the most part, with, you know, regarding everybody else, of course, Susan Storm pops a force field, protects people, things along those lines. You end up having basically Nightcrawler who teleports aboard the ship, trying to destroy them, or at least trying to save people. But in the middle of this, what they're trying to do, at least the heroes anyway, they're trying to get to the Guardians of the Port, right? The Guardians of the Port that will essentially help anybody out there who is dealing with basically any threat, whether it's named with a Submariner or any of these guys. And ultimately that happens. And it happens with the emergence of Fin Fang Foom. which is cool. Like, he literally just comes flying out of the ocean, which is absolutely amazing. And when Peter's daughter is just like freaking out, it's just like, no, it's okay, May. And she's like, it's a monster. And he's like, yeah, it's the guardian of the port, right? Like what he says is Fin Fang Foom was our monster. And the reason why Fin Fang Foom is on the side of heroes, again, for lack of a better word, is because it's not just Fin Fang Foom. It's actually Scott Lang and Fin Fang Foom working together. And the reason why is because, remember, when everything shut down, because Scott Lang's ability to utilize the Ant-Man tech of shrinking or growing is based on technology, right? Based on power. When the power went out, he was stuck in giant size mode. So he's just giant. He's just a huge guy. And it's cool to see Scott Lang riding a dragon and burning the Ghost Raiders and destroying their ship and sending them back down to the depths. And so again, this is in truth probably one of the weaker issues, because the way this ends is really everybody just sort of mulling over and acknowledging the fact that Nick Fury has essentially died. But at the end of the day, the mission must go on. Now, I will say this, the next one, issue 5, and especially issue 6, man, especially when you find out what's going on with the new symbiote, that's nuts. Dude, the new symbiote is, oh my God, it's amazing. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.